Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. I like to nerd out to the science behind how we can keep our houseplants happy and to multiply them in our homes. So if you're into that kind of content, please do subscribe to my channel and send me likes. In today's video, we're going to talk all about the variegated monsteras. It's going to be a long video, but I'm going to cover the care propagation methods as well as the different types. And I'm also going to give you a timeline so you know how long propagation takes, and I'm going to show you the parent plants and the baby. So bear with me, it's going to be an exciting video. But I want to give you a warning beforehand that I don't want this video to be an advocate for the variegated monstera, which is ridiculously overpriced now. There's an overly crazy hype over it. So let me clear that part first. Variegated monsteras are actually beautiful, but as you can see, I actually have a few of them. I got them before the pandemic last year when the prices were still, it was expensive, but it was still not the way they are right now. So I got them at a very affordable price at the time. So I propagated quite a lot of them. So first thing first, I'm not selling my monstera, so please do not DM me, please do not comment down below to ask me if I'm selling them. I'm not. I'm gonna be cultivating them, I'm gonna be multiplying them a lot. I may release them in 1 or 2 years when I have a lot of plants. And for those of you who don't have one yet and is waiting for one, trust me, the prices are definitely going down. There are a lot of people like me who are multiplying these babies. They grow super fast. And then, yeah, there will be more supply than demand soon enough. So just be patient. Meanwhile, I also do want to mention a few species of plants that are just as beautiful. Just because they're not as much as mentioned on Instagram doesn't mean that they're not as stunning. First of all, the variegated peace lily is very, very beautiful. It's easy to care for. The variegation is just so insane. It's so random, and they're very, very affordable. And then you have your alocasia macrorrhiza, which has really beautiful variegations. They need a little bit more bright light than the monsteras, but the splashes of variegation is really beautiful. It's like strokes of paintbrush. And then you have your Syngonium podophyllum variegata. Oh my god, these guys, they grow like weed. They're so beautiful. I'm going to show all these plants on the screen, by the way, so you'll see what they look like. Again, they're very easy to care for. They're fast growers. They're good to share, and they're very, very easy to acquire right now. And if you're up for a little bit of challenge, actually, the Calathea white fusion is a good candidate. It's got beautiful white variegations, and it's actually a very, very difficult houseplant to keep alive and to keep its variegation. And as we're under lockdown, I think this is a perfect plant to have and to learn and to kind of challenge ourselves, because it needs a lot of babying, it needs a lot of attention. I actually have a video on this up on my channel, so if you want to look at the care and propagation, do check that video out. I think the last plant that I'm going to mention is the Epipremnum pinnatum variegata, and that's also beautiful. The leaves can actually get bigger than the monsteras. Actually, they come out with these beautiful split leaves when they get mature and when you allow them to climb up. So yeah, there you go. I also want to recommend for you guys to jump into the green form Monstera deliciosa plant, because listen, hear me out. A lot of you guys are actually buying the variegated monsteras without any prior experience of caring for a monstera, and I find that to be, honestly speaking, a little bit irresponsible. I've got a lot of monsteras before I got my variegated when I gained a lot of confidence in not just caring for them but also in propagating them. So it's important for you to learn the basics first, because when I go to the forums on Facebook or on Instagram, people are always DMing each other. People are always like asking, like, you know, how do you save the variegated monstera? I'm tired of hearing all these questions, because if you know the basics of caring for one, a monstera, or two, a variegated plant, you will know how to troubleshoot your plant better. So before you invest your time in getting such an expensive plant, do check out the basics, especially now when you have so much time to experiment. And other than variegated plants, there are so many cool plants out there that are, again, they may not be Instagram worthy, but they're just as beautiful and they're just good to have around, especially during our pandemic when it's sort of an opportunity for us to learn how to care for multiple types of plants and develop our skills as plant parents, and also prepare our cuttings later for plant swaps, of course. So without further ado, I'm gonna talk about the plant care first, I guess. Soil. First of all, monsteras are epiphytes, so in nature they would not be in potted soils, obviously. And a lot of you guys are actually growing your monsteras in like general purpose potting soil, and that's actually okay. But if you want it to be happy, give it like a very chunky aroid mix. I do cover my soil mix extensively in my soil video if you want to check that out. But something with a lot of bark or a lot of cocoa chips where the roots can really develop and grip into it, that would allow them to push out bigger leaves and to just have a good grip into the substrate. At the same time, you really do need, it's a must, to give your monsteras a moss pole. Whether it's the green form or the variegated, if you want those big split leaves, you have to first of all train it up. Well, of course, when you get your monstera, it's probably a tiny plant like this, but if you it gets a little bit bigger and you have more leaves, it's gonna start to put out these aerial roots, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna want to tie the plant onto a moss pole and have the aerial roots kind of kiss the moss pole, and where possible you want to miss that area where the moss pole is touching the moss pole, and it will find the humidity, it will find the pole and will grow into it, it will grip it. And when the monstera believes that it's climbing up, if you fool it into thinking it's climbing up a tree, it will give you bigger leaves. It's gonna grow faster for you. So yeah, definitely get a moss pole. It's a must for any monsteras. In terms of watering, monsteras like to dry out really fast. So give them a fast draining soil and let them dry out in between waterings. If you have them outdoors, you can water them a lot more frequently because the evaporation rate is higher than when you have it indoors. In terms of fertilizing, I actually fertilize them lightly with both slow release, worm casting, as well as chemical growth hormone fertilizer. But I use very minute amounts. And sunlight, I think sunlight is the most important and probably... Yeah! Cut it out! And in terms of sunlight, this is the most important and also the most controversial topic when we talk about the variegated monsteras. Personally for me, in my experience, I have a lot of them in my care, and when I stick them in brighter light, they give you more variegation. Let me explain a bit. So let me show you the variegation on the stem. It runs along the stem, and as you can see these stripes, the variegated parts, it determines the variegation on the leaves. So if this is, let's say, a lot of green with no white stripes, then it will have a lot more greener leaves. And as you can see here with the new, this is the newest leaf, and this is where the new leaf will come from. You see this triangle? That's where it will split from this. And from here I can already tell that this plant will be pretty variegated based on this. If you have if this side of the plant is nearly all green, then the new leaf is almost guaranteed to be closer to the green. With that logic, a lot of people have come up with the conclusion that the variegation is completely random. However, in my experience, when you put them in a dark, in a lower light situation, as with any variegated plant, they do start giving you all green leaves. Their variegation reverts. So with that in mind, I believe that the inverse is true, in which when you stick them in brighter light, the variegation is increased because somehow the plant chooses to come up with a leaf that has more variegation despite having, of course you do need that strip of variegation on the stem for the plant to make that choice to begin with. Again, that is my theory. And another thing with sticking them in the brightest light possible is that it's also going to help it grow faster. As long as you're not burning the leaves, yeah, the plant is going to grow much faster for you. So there's no harm in putting them, in the brightest light possible. And the way that I place them is actually in an east-facing window, huge floor-to-ceiling window, where it gets direct morning sunlight and very bright indirect light throughout the day. I've actually pulled a lot of them back from that area, from the spot where I had them before, because their variegation was getting too crazy. They're getting too many whites. So again, I want to talk about the variegation first of all. Variegation is actually a mutation in a plant. It's actually a sickness. Variegated plants in nature would never survive because they would not they would be outcompeted by the all green forms of the plant. And while variegations are beautiful for us, the white parts actually are not producing any energy for the plant and is causing it to decline. So with a variegated plant, with any variegated plants, the growth is going to be a bit slower than your non-variegated versions. And also when you have too many whites, the plant is producing less food, which means it's going to grow less quickly. And if you have too much variegation, the plant may even die out very, very slowly. And another thing with variegation is that they're also very prone to browning here on the tips. If you look at Instagram, you look at everyone's variegated monsteras, they look beautiful. But in real life, I've seen many variegated monsteras. None of them are perfect. The variegated parts, especially at the tips, will usually brown up. And if you cut it, the brown is just going to keep spreading. So it's definitely not a very sexy look. Just wanted to keep in mind that variegated monsteras are not as perfect as they look on Instagram. Okay, so there are actually two main types of variegated monstera. Over there in the front, we have the Thai constellation, and here we have the typical monstera albo variegata. And the difference between the two, I'm going to quickly discuss it, is that the Thai constellation over there, it's actually man-made. It's a cultivar. It's got yellower variegation. It's got splashier variegation. It's not going to get these solid variegations very often. And they are actually grown through tissue culture, which means that they can be mass-produced very easily. Of course, they can be propagated the same way they would propagate our other monsteras. Although I would say that the nodes are actually much closer together, which makes the cut a little bit more tricky and difficult. And also, they're very, very, very slow growers. The Thai constellation grows, I think, about 2 to 3 times slower than the regular variegated monsteras. So just keep that in mind. And when you have things that are slow growing, they may be slow to root and slow to take off, which means that you may have a higher failure rate at propagation. I have not yet propagated my Thai constellation, but I may one day. But I'm scared just looking at it. And another thing about the Thai constellation is that they actually have thicker leaves and thicker petioles, so they're more solid and they're more sturdy. Which probably explains why they grow so much slower, because they need all the energy to push up this more quality Thai leaves. And the thing with Thai constellation is that they actually produce one big, the next leaf is almost guaranteed to be bigger than the last leaf. So that's what's really good about the Thai constellation, unlike the albo variegata. So back to this guy, the variegated monstera. This is the one that we're most crazy about, I guess. They have thinner leaves, they grow pretty fast. They put out about a new leaf every 3 to 4 weeks if they're healthy. They do burn up and get damaged on the leaves much more readily than the Thai constellation. So just keep that in mind. In terms of pricing, I believe that the Thai constellation here in Indonesia is actually a little bit more expensive than the albos. It may be different in other parts of the world, maybe especially if you have access to the tissue cultured version of the Thai constellation. And this guy is actually the one monstera that is doing well in my care. It hasn't given me a lot of brown tips, thankfully. But its leaves keep getting more and more variegated. And as you can see from down below, this is when I got it. And as I bought it, I stuck this in a bright, very, very bright indirect light location, and it's given me more and more variegation. So I'm gonna stick this in the dark. Not in the dark, I mean a lower light situation where hopefully it'll put out greener leaves. Or I may propagate it, I'm not sure, I may cut it up. I actually talked to my family a few days ago. We have this in our dining area, but none of my family actually appreciates plants, let alone variegated plants. And I'm actually really bored staring at this. It's beautiful, but when you have so many variegated monsteras and when you live with them for so long, you just notice that there are better plants. There are more stunning plants out there. And even the green form of the plant is beautiful to me, and I'm very happy when the new leaves unfurl. With this guy, back to my point, if we're not so excited about this in our home, I might just propagate it and cut it up, because if I do that and I wait a year or two, it's going to give me a lot more plant material, more material to share with you guys, hopefully, if I do decide to sell them. Yeah. Here we have some half moon monsteras. It did not do well. I put it in a very low light situation actually, and haha, surprisingly, it gave me an all green leaf, sorry. It gave me two all green leaves. So that's why I decided to just propagate it and cut it off. The parent plant is now giving me completely green leaves, so that's pretty useless. However, these cuttings just took off, and I'm hoping from here that it may have some half-moon variegation, but I'm not sure. As you can see here, it's coming off from a part of the stem with a little bit of variegation, so there may be a chance of variegation on this on these half moons. They're quite difficult to come by, so I hope that, yeah, I can't see, but I'll be patient and let's see what happens to them. Here's the plant that I've propagated 13 weeks ago. I did a video on this, however, I didn't have the right setup at the time. I didn't even have my channel yet. And the sound was crazy, so I'm just gonna show you some clips of that. Back then, this is the parent plant. What I did was I actually air layered it, which means that I actually wrapped this in sphagnum moss before I cut that plant up to encourage the aerial roots to form beforehand. However, that was a mistake because the moss, sphagnum moss actually did too good of a job. So all the inside of the moss was tangled up with all these aerial roots that have rooted up. I ended up having to cut off a lot of the roots because I was unable to untangle them. So in hindsight, I think it would just be better to have propagated the monstera with the aerial roots, just as it is. I actually propagated 6 pots of plants, and only 4 survived, unfortunately. And that's surprising for me because the survival rate is actually quite low. I've actually propagated a lot of the green form of the monstera, and I would say 99. I actually don't remember having any of them die back. So yeah, the variegated, one of the reasons for the prices of variegated monstera is probably because it's got a high failure chance when you propagate it. And as you can see, I'm gonna just pick one. This is so beautiful, this new leaf. So this is the original leaf, and this has put out 2 leaves. This one has put out 2 leaves as well, and this one has put out 2 leaves, and this is the new one, and the third one along the way. And again, if I want this to grow faster, I'm definitely gonna have to give all of them a moss pole. As for the parent plant, I left 1 leaf on the plant, which is this one, and from where I cut it, let me quickly show you. That's where I made the cut. This new vine appeared, and there's actually another one down there. This one didn't take off though. It grew a little bud, but no leaves have emerged yet. So this one put out a tiny leaf first, and that's what happens with monsteras, by the way. When you propagate them, they're gonna give you a super junior leaf, and then from then it's gonna start giving you these leaves. So this parent plant, when you cut them off, sometimes they would branch out. They would give you multiple branches. However, imagine that this plant, as before I cut it, it was so big. It's got such a beautiful and healthy root system there, but with the top cut off entirely, it's got so much energy to push out new growth, which is why this plant has given me 1, 2, 3, 4 leaves currently. And the baby plants have given me 2 leaves each. And just to remind you guys, that is 13 weeks of growth. So I actually propagated these right into soil. So they have these aerial roots, as you can see here. They already have that. So I just stuck that right into my aroid soil mix, and they just took off. I did nothing more. The 2 that did not survive actually rotted off. One of them was the top cutting, and it did not have enough aerial roots. And it's also got 2 leaves on the top cutting. So the 2 leaves were actually draining too much energy, and then there was not enough roots to support it, and it died. In hindsight, what I would have done is, with those, the top cutting, I should have actually propagated them in water, and I should have taken 1 leaf off. So that it just has 1 leaf to support with its tiny roots. So when you propagate a plant with 2 or even 3 leaves, that's insane. Just be aware that you may experience some death if you allow that to happen. So with each node, I'm gonna be able to have 1 potential branch. So I'm gonna keep at least 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna keep at least 3 nodes here. And snip. There you go. So yeah, so these 3 leaves are gonna start pushing out new growths. And then for this, let me see. aerial root has rooted into the soil. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna cut it right around here. Because if you have too much roots, you can't propagate it as well. So this is really beautiful. And as you can see, it's gonna start taking off and giving you multiple roots. Here's another cutting. This one's also rooted. Yeah, perfect. This one, the root came off very quickly, so perfect. Yeah, as you can see here, the leaves are actually super tiny. And then as you let it climb up the moth pole, it gets this fenestrations, or splits rather, very quickly. Beautiful. Nice. Whoa. This is gonna give me like a beautiful almost half moon, I think. Yeah, nice. And very, very good roots. I'm very happy with this propagation. So actually in the wild, monsteras, if they grow up a tree or a rock surface and it got cut off, actually the roots will still survive. The roots will keep growing onto the surface which it clings onto. In fact, a lot of monsteras, they're so high up on a tree, they actually have no middle section. So it's like a bunch of monsteras, kind of like this, and then it's just roots, and sometimes the roots even go down to the ground, so where it's rooted in, sometimes even into water. So I've seen that into like lakes and things like that. So the roots are just developing in there. Of course, it's water roots, and it's going to be very different from soil. For me, my theory is that monsteras can develop 3 different types of roots. Obviously, one is the water root, another one would be a softer root, more for like soil substrate, and the third would be the very grippy type of root, the very strong roots that we want from our monsteras. And they will grow the roots depending on the substrate that you give it. Beautiful. This one has a low chance of survival because it's got so many whites. So let's see. And if you look at here, if I cut it here, the new nodes will come out probably from this side, and this side actually has a lot of green. So this is probably gonna give me a nice and green leaf. Alright, let's carefully take out this last one. This one doesn't have a lot of roots, and you have to be careful. So with the cutting like this, it may die. Just so you know, because it's got 3 leaves, it's got very little roots. So these roots are going to try to grow more roots. At the same time, it's trying to also feed the leaves. So sometimes it's better to just cut them off. When I see here, I have the old all white leaves. Some of you are gonna scream right now. I'm gonna cut it off. This grab the wrong one. Yeah, this is no good for me. So yeah, I actually may keep this as a, let me see, do I want this to be a 2? I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm gonna keep this as it is because I can cut it into 2 plants, but the roots are so tiny. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep it as one single plant for now. And the mama plant's done. It's gonna recover and it should put out multiple branches. I'll update you guys on this. I'm gonna quickly pot these guys up. I'm gonna show you how I do it. So I used my trusted aroid soil mix. Yeah, I've been making these big batches of them instead of tiny batches. It's a lot more time efficient for me. Actually, I boil each time I mix my aroid soil mix. I don't really have a formula, in case you guys are wondering. And if you want to know what I put in them, in my aroid soil mix, do check out my soil video. I cover each ingredients and I cover my recipe. And each time it's going to be a little bit different, but I know it's going to work because the theory is relatively the same. You want a soil that dries out fast, and also there's burnt rice hulls in here. Thankfully, it's quite in abundance here in Indonesia. So it actually prevents, or rather it helps, it helps prevent root rot, which is something that the plants need. So I'm actually going to hit this with slow release fertilizer with a little bit of insecticide. I'm going to show you right here. So after I pot these up, I'm going to give them my mix of slow release fertilizer and also insecticide to prevent any insects or pests from living in the soil. And this slow release fertilizer is not going to harm the cutting because it's going to release very slowly. You don't want to fertilize the plant with strong chemical fertilizers now because you're going to burn it. And also you don't want to use organic material that's too rich because it may also rot the plant. Organic material will rot the roots. So you need to have your balance. But this slow release fertilizers, because they're good for like 6 months, it's going to slowly release the nutrients over time. Swirl this in the pot. Let's swirl that. Here we go. I think, I don't know how many cuttings there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7. I'm not good at counting. Yeah, 7 cuttings. I'm expecting about 5 of them to live, I think. Or unless I'm smarter than before, where I can keep more of them alive. But they're not so easy. And this one leaf that I'm looking at, with a lot of variegation, I don't even know if that's gonna make it. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about wet stick propagation. You're not gonna hear it on this video because I've never done it before. It's probably very challenging and it's probably interesting. I may be up for the challenge someday in the future, maybe with a different plant. But yeah, it seems to me that wet stick propagation is one of the ways that most of you guys are acquiring the variegated monsteras. It just lets me know that there's a lot of desperation for this plant, there's a lot of effort, and there's also a lot of heartbreaks and a lot of drama online, people complaining about, or panicking unnecessarily about their wet stick propagation. And I just want to remind you guys that, yeah, maybe some of you guys find that thrill exciting, and I can see that. I may be up for the challenge myself someday. But some of you genuinely do want that plant to thrive and take off, and some of them do, most of them do probably. I don't know the success rate of that, probably lower than these propagations. What was my point actually? Yeah, so there's actually a lot of heartbreak, a lot of stress and anxiety coming from this topic of wet stick propagation, and I do hope that one day it will not go away, it will reduce. Like I don't think that's one way that we should be. I don't think it's a healthy way for us to approach our relationship with rare plants. Again, back to my my personal take is that plant care should be relatively stress-free. It should reduce our stress, not increase it. So I just wanted you guys to remind yourselves, like everyone's philosophy is different, right? So what is your philosophy in growing houseplants? Maybe you're just simply into variegated plants or rare aroids, but what I want to remind myself is that I actually am in this plant journey because I enjoy growing the plants, seeing them grow, and having them reduce my stress. Because actually when I do propagation and potting up, such as what I'm doing now, it brings me so much calm and peace, and I don't have to deal with people, and I'm doing something that I know will have a good impact on the plants and on the world or the people that I share the cuttings with. That's why I'm in this plant game. But everybody's different. I'm not gonna poo-poo you on why you want to keep houseplants. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents. And when you have a lot of roots like this, you want to be careful. If I put this in this tiny pot, it might break, so I'm gonna put it in a bigger pot. And the way that I would water these cuttings is I would do it every day or so. I would look at the soil. I would actually pick up the pot to feel if it's heavy or not. In my previous experience, it's about every 2 to 3 days. And it's different each time depending on the sunlight you're getting, the weather. They do get rained on. And if it gets rained on every day, that's fine too, because this soil mix it's so chunky and it's so airy. And you also want to pot it in such a way that, oh sorry, this is blocking the camera. I'm not so good at this. Okay, sorry. There's a camera down there, so as I put plants over there, it's like covering my processes. Okay. Now you guys can see what I'm doing. So you want to have this obviously facing up, and you actually want some of the node to be a little bit exposed. This way that you can actually see when new growth emerge, but also my theory is that it would not suffocate any new shoots that is trying to come out from there. So you don't want to block it, block the entryway. Okay, leave that there. And I have two more. I'm going to get a tiny pot for this. Okay, this is a perfect size pot. Beautiful. And the last one, let's see. This one has long roots. This is gonna do beautifully, actually. So nice. So yeah, it works. If this is too much for you, if it's too long for you, you can actually cut it. I would say like right around here. I don't know how many, like maybe that's 17 to 20 centimeters. That's enough roots for it to put out into it. Beautiful. So that took about 15 minutes. It's very fast. Okay, so I'm gonna just quickly fertilize all of them. Okay, and then I'm just gonna give them a good drink. I'm just gonna leave them in a bright indirect light location to let them start putting out growth. So here's a close-up look on the 7 offsprings. Yeah, and keeping in mind that this has to face up because the new nodes are gonna appear somewhere here. Here we go, and smaller leaves. And that's the parent plant. So the parent plant's gonna take off again. It's gonna give me multiple branches, hopefully. Right, so I wanna thank you for coming along with me on this variegated monstera ramble and educational video. And I wanna remind you guys, as we look at all the other plants, that if we shift our attention to so many beautiful and wonderful plants out there, instead of all focusing our energy and time on the variegated monsteras, their prices will go down. So yeah, I really want to implore everybody to check out other cool species of plants that are affordable and are just as magnificent and it's just cool. This is my Hoya rack. Yeah, so through this channel, I really hope to inspire you guys to check out so many cool species of plants to have in your care, especially during the pandemic. I'm @botanist on Instagram. Please do DM me if you have any questions about plant care and propagation. I will try my best to get back to you. Meanwhile, do take care and stay safe. I will see you in the next video. Bye!